back for round 2, episode number 2 at Casa. This is actually at my home right now. My name is Phil, the founder of Camp. We throw the best startup and VC events in the world. And I am here with Olivia Ramos. She is she's a badass. 2, she's an entrepreneur. 3, she's technical. And 4, she's been to many of my events in person. Mostly in Miami, but this is the first time she's on the podcast. So I'm super excited to have her. We're going to dive into her past and talk about what's coming up in her future. But really quickly, why don't you give me just like the 1 minute, 2 minute spiel on who Olivia is, and then I'll start aiming some questions at you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me.
For sure.
So a little of my background. I started architecture very early, design and architecture senior high in the design district in Miami. I have a bachelor's in architecture from UF, a master's in architecture from Columbia University, a second master's in real estate development from the University of Miami, and worked in construction, architecture, brokerage, development, and kind of lost faith in the whole process. Ended up at the Department of Defense under the DARPA Innovation House to design big data navigation software. And then took that project to Singularity University, where Deepblocks was born.
Got it.
That's
Okay.
my background onto Deepblocks.
Wow, that's an impressive background. First off, that's an impressive background. But how did you get into the startup world with what you said in the beginning, like the real estate and all that? Like, how did that lead to startup life?
Well, at Singularity, it was the Global Solutions Program. And part of the program, you had to build a startup. And so you had to build a startup that was using an exponential technology that was solving a global grand challenge. And so, I came in there with the DARPA project, which was about how to bring information into the brain seamlessly, using all kinds of different sensory intakes. And then I realized I had no background in that. I had no background in any kind of neuroscience. And that everything I was learning there about exponential technologies combined really interestingly with my background in real estate. Plus, I had a partner at the time, like a team member that started the idea with me, who was really passionate about real estate. And so, things he said to me from the AI world led me to believe that this was really possible.
Okay. And how old is Deepblocks currently? And what have you accomplished in that time? What would you say you accomplished in that time?
Yeah, a lot.
Good.
So the idea started in June 2016.
Okay.
We incorporated December 2016. We raised for about a year before we started coding. We started an engineering team.
Just to pause you for a second, you said
Yeah.
you raised before anything, correct?
Yes, we raised
So this
with
is
a deck.
Idea on napkin type thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Out having an actual product, how did that go?
Yeah, so Bernard Leong, who was him and I came up with the idea together. He had to go back to Singapore, and we brought in Udi Wolfowitz, who had been leading AI teams for Mobileye, who then exited to Intel. So his depth in AI and what was possible was really, really deep. I learned a lot from that, but we would sit across from investors and say, we can get an AI to understand real estate. And they would ask him if that's possible. He's like, that's easy. And anything real estate related, I'd be able to answer. So we were like the dream team for this vision at the time. And people just wrote checks.
Whoa. That's like the epitome of founder market fit, essentially. They already knew you had crazy domain expertise. Because it's not often where an investor is going to be like, okay, here's $2 million or whatever. And there's just nothing to show for it yet. It's just
Well, we did this little pilot that nobody could touch, showing what it would look like for a 3D model and a financial model to be combined, which was how we started. And that combination, people were used to seeing it in Excel and then in CAD, but never together, I think was really persuasive.
Yeah, it gave you
But it was you couldn't even touch it. It was like a mock-up.
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost like an idea. It's like a fancy napkin.
It was
idea
a fancy
on a napkin.
deck. Yeah.
Okay, so sorry.
But nothing was working. Yeah, there was nothing.
There's nothing okay. Just to make sure. And the terms, were they favorable to you, just out of curiosity?
We used the same terms as Singularity because Singularity invested first. We got so we were the only company that went from Global Solutions to Incubator to Accelerator in the same year.
Okay.
So we were at Ames campus for 10 months straight. And so they invested first, and that was really favorable because we had a lead and we had a strong lead, because Singularity is a big name, especially in Silicon Valley.
Was it a convertible note?
Yes, it was a safe.
I thought I read that.
Yes.
Safe. It was a safe. Okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool. And this was how many years ago, you said?
2017 was the accelerator.
Okay, okay. And then not proceed, I'm sorry.
Proceed with.
After that, remember when we pressed pause on the story?
No, I don't remember now.
We were talking about the trajectory, essentially. So like after that.
Oh, and how much we've accomplished so far. So you can, the pause are gonna like.
I didn't mean to do that. That'll be my last pause, I promise you.
No, it's fine. So we decided we wanted to mimic the entire real estate development process, from understanding the market, everything I learned in grad school, essentially, understanding the market, understanding what's possible, making investment thesis, testing it out, eventually understanding what you could build exactly. And our first deck took it all the way to like sustainable systems and the actual building itself. And that has changed a little bit. But the first hurdle was zoning data was not digitized at the time. There was only one company that had done like 1 or 2 cities. So it wasn't data that we could purchase. And so we started digitizing it ourselves. And that was like one of the biggest like data science. Like first it was like a very software driven play, and then it quickly became a data science play.
Not on purpose. Or yes, on purpose. Like you knew this from the beginning, you want to do something like this.
No, not on purpose. From the beginning, I thought we were just building software.
Right.
And then I realized that the software without the data wasn't as useful. And the data, not only that, but the data was like really powerful, especially if it wasn't digitized. So right now we have the largest repository of digitized zoning data in the country. Largest not just in the number of cities, but also in the depth of the data. So we're one of the only companies that has historical zoning data. So now we can begin to predict zoning changes. And we have zoning data down to the logic of what you can build on a particular site, not just the rules, which is kind of the standard now.
I'm gonna assume right now, I'm just going on an assumption, there's not too many females in the category of what you're talking about with startup technology, with zoning. Are you one of the only ones? Is it like a male type of industry, or am I incorrect?
I think in the tech side of things, most of my peers from like this cohort of like, 2015 to 2018 are male. But there is like a really powerful professor at Cornell who's tackling zoning.
Okay.
And it's a woman. She's doing a phenomenal job.
Okay. And tell me like the hurdles currently that you're going through. I'm sure there's many of them, but I guess list a couple of them that are big. What are some big hurdles right now, or like some problematic things that are going on, the fires that you're trying to put out with growth stage, I assume?
Today, not along the way.
Along the way, but also today. So if you could say some in the past,
they're
but also
different, yeah.
Yeah, they're for sure different.
Yeah.
So compare a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, I think before was product market fit. Like we were like team market fit from the beginning. Like
yes.
We knew
founder market fit.
Founder market fit,
yeah.
Yes. And then product market fit, I think there were a lot of hurdles.
Okay.
Data is more powerful than software. We learned that the hard way. So we had to, and it's great that we were able to digitize our own data, because then we were able to design the software for that, for what we really found valuable in the data. And raising money has always been a hurdle. Proving that although the market wasn't responding as quickly as we wanted it to, that we were building really important infrastructure for the ultimate goal, which is to be able to detect investments automatically. So the way we do algorithmic trading in the stock market, that's the way we see real estate in the future. So our investors saw that and supported us along the way, but there were hurdles in those conversations. Now is marketing. So we have phenomenal product. We've proven product market fit. We're doing really interesting stuff, like we're the only ones who can give reports on almost real-time zoning changes, which is just like when you buy data from the New York Stock Exchange a second earlier. Like if you know that these cities,
Right.
yeah,
Like magic.
For us, it's not a second earlier, but it could be a couple of months, and that
Right.
can make a big difference in due diligence. So now the hurdle is getting that out there to the world. And what we've done, and we mentioned it in the last conference that we were in the panel, is to begin almost like a news agency or a marketing agency within Deepblocks. And we've trained different models to write about really interesting real estate topics automatically. So we're pumping around 2,500 articles a day.
Jesus.
And that's, because we want to have consistency. We have that for like 6 months. We're now bringing different layers, and we're going to be able to maybe like 10,000 articles a day. And so each of those articles have placements for ads that bring back to our products, or even like to some of our clients. And so I think the idea of being able to get this out into every local developer, every, broker, will require more than like just LinkedIn or just like ads. We have to kind of take a hold of that. And that's become a really, really interesting project for multiple reasons. But maybe you have a question. But
I do.
Yeah.
Who are you targeting exactly? Like, who's that end user? Who's your customer, essentially?
We have right now, so there are different phases of customers in here. Our first phase, which we're still working on, is the commercial brokers and the developer. Not necessarily the local developer, but the regional and national developer.
Got it.
So those are the regional national developers. They want to understand exactly when something happens. Like when was something rezoned, because that's precedence for all this other rezoning. Like what are all the underutilized sites in a very hot area that I should be targeting? And it's usually we can bring it down to like 3 to 5% of all the properties in a matter of seconds.
Okay.
So the speed of things is something that we're working with those clients.
Okay.
And then on the broker side, we just signed a partnership with Christie's International Real Estate to begin to pilot how do we use all the data that we have to bring them seller leads and buyer leads, which is, so I'm not sure how familiar you are with the brokerage industry, but the only leads that there's been available so far is buyer leads. So if you go to Zillow and you say you're interested in a house, you're a buyer lead that then gets sold not to the agent representing the seller, but to an agent paying for that lead.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but the seller lead is it's been kind of impossible to find.
Okay.
And we have that because we know which properties are underutilized. Okay. So when a property is underutilized, a developer would be interested in purchasing it, which means the seller is most likely to sell to that developer than just to a regular buyer who's buying it for whatever there is at the moment. The value to the developer is much higher, if that makes sense.
So okay, but you said that this is like your first wave of customer or whatever. What is the next phase for customers?
Okay, so once we are able to successfully and at scale, right now we're piloting in 3 different states: New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Once we scale that, now we have the eyes and ears of all the brokers who want seller leads, all the developers they're selling those leads to, and also the funds and the national regional developers that are already working with us. So now that we have this trusted platform, we can begin to add things like listings. And once you have listings, now you have just regular buyers and sellers, which is like a completely different size of market. And then once blockchain, IoT, and all these things catch up to real estate, which they're starting already, fractional investments, titles in the blockchain. There's a great company called Proppy already doing that. They're actually in Miami. And so we are setting ourselves up to be the platform for trading fractional real estate and trading, essentially like buying and selling real estate online.
Whoa. Okay. So that's going to be like the future, essentially. Well, the near future, I should say.
The near future. I mean, it's already happening, but like not at that,
the level you want it to yet. That's all.
The level that, well, either way, we have a lot of things to build to get to that. But we're building it, we think, in great timing with the process of the blockchain and IoT.
So I've seen a lot of articles in the PR about you know, doing awesome stuff, kicking ass, raising money, coming out with great products. There's some of them right here. But talk to me like how maybe an entrepreneur that is in early stages listening, like how would they go about getting in articles like this? Did you have to like shop this? Did you just build and then they like approached you, or how did that look? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, we've never been great at marketing. We've never shopped anything.
That's why you're doing the AI thing.
That's why like we want to kind of bypass the traditional system and just do our own marketing firm in a way.
That's almost better. It's because
it's more interesting.
Right.
But I'll tell you a different byproduct of that. So our goal is to have our own models that tell us where to invest, right? Proprietary models. Right now, your OpenAI models, like your Anthropic models, they don't have structured real estate data. They have to go to the internet and get something. But when you use an API, use them through an API, you need other systems to go to the internet, like AI agents, like Crew AI or Chainlink.
Okay.
And that becomes really expensive, like $2.50 a call, right? So what we're doing is all these articles that we're writing using those models become, instead of structured data, which is really hard to train these LLMs on structured data because they really are trained on language, right? But all of these articles, we have 160,000 articles right now, and we started 3 months ago. Those will be training sets for LLMs that will become experts in real estate and have the structured data available, right?
I feel like you're getting really gangster with marketing. This is just nuts what you're saying right now. You're basically saying like you don't like traditional forms of marketing. You don't want to spend too much manpower doing all the marketing. So essentially you want to come out with AI tools to help you pump out a ton of stuff on the back end and then connect it to platforms that point to your direction when they're utilized.
That ton of stuff we're producing will have ads for our stuff. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's it. I just don't understand traditional marketing.
This might be a good thing though.
I don't know, like, this is the thing, like our industry is really technical in its own way. And normal marketing agencies might not understand zoning.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people investing in real estate and prop tech and they don't understand zoning.
Right.
So it has to be, imagine if we pump for every city in the US when zoning changes are happening and what it means and the repercussions on population. And, it's not just zoning, we're combining it with demographics, with housing prices, with interest rates. And so we become a point of attraction for people who care about that, who are essentially our clients. And we feel like that's a more direct way to reach them than to try to do some I don't know. I don't even understand.
I feel like it's super smart though. Like,
thank you.
You're playing it down. I feel like that's brilliant on what you're doing. Like this makes sense. Like from a marketing angle, this makes a lot of sense. Because if you go to a traditional marketing agency, there's only two things that are going to happen, I think. They're not going to understand the depths of what you just said. So they're either going to take your money and F you and do nothing great with it, or B, they're going to tell you like, we can't do this because we just don't understand the ins and outs, the intricacy of the industry, which I think most people should say that if they're honest people.
Agreed. And then it would take a lot of my time. Might as well put that time into something that could also train proprietary models.
Right.
So that's kind of the argument.
Okay. So when are we going to know if this works and how well it works?
So anything that's reliant on SEO takes time.
Sure.
And even a marketing agency, that's like the honest ones will tell you, we need at least 3 months to begin to see any like signs or signals of success.
I would have said 6 months, but okay. Yep.
I agree. So it's been 3 months since we started and we're already seeing signs and signals of success. But I think in 6 months we'll be able to tell you, okay, this is going to work. Right?
Yeah. Okay. So by early next year, you should know like what's happening.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
And if it, please do. And if it is working, then what happens? Do you like pump it up more? Like what happens if it's working versus not?
Absolutely. I mean, so it's a very ambitious project.
Yeah.
For every single neighborhood, every single zip code, and every single city, we have deep information for those areas.
Yeah.
So no matter where you live, you'll be able to have like 20, 30, 50, and over time, more articles on exactly what's going on there.
Is this all commercial or any residential whatsoever?
Both.
It is both.
It's just what's going on in those areas. Because when you have a zoning change, for example, it affects it could
everything.
affect everything. So if you have a single family home and all of a sudden you can do a fourplex, you want to know that.
Yeah.
Right? And a developer wants to know that. Because anybody that's likely to sell, they want to get there as soon as possible. So all the information is really valuable. Plus all the updates on how demographic is changing, housing prices, crime rates. I mean, everything you can imagine, like new restaurants, whatever, anything, typologies of architecture, like everything that you can imagine. It's like the most interesting thing we've ever done, I think.
I mean, it's super interesting. And even someone that's not in real estate per se, like is still interested in what you're speaking about. You have to meet the next guest coming in a little bit. He's like a real estate mogul.
Oh, yeah?
So he's going to like love what you're doing right now. So
meet
during passing, when you leave and he comes here, you have to meet him. His name is Shane.
Awesome.
Anyway, okay. So tell me, like, I know we've been talking about like business stuff, but that's been the focus. Talk to me more about like the personal side. Where did you come up? What kind of family? What are some of the things that you did growing up, hobby-wise? What schools did you go to? Tell me like the personal side of Olivia.
Okay, let me see. Well, I was born in Cuba,
Okay.
Havana, Cuba. My mother's an architect.
This makes sense.
And my father in Cuba was a biochemist.
Okay.
And so I grew up like in my mom's, in like the Havana National Architecture firm, because there's no private companies there. And I fell in love with all the like paraphernalia of architecture, like all the pens and da-da-da. And, you know, once I got to school, all of that was gone. It was all in computers. But like, I always loved this idea of like, you know, creating something from scratch, I guess. And when we came here, I wanted to be an artist. My grandfather on my mom's side is an artist. He was like the 7th top pastelist of France. Big deal. Like his art is all over my family's houses, like everywhere you go. And so my mom said, why don't you study architecture? Because it's the highest of the arts. So she like convinced me that I could have a job eventually.
Yeah.
And architecture, I think, was the most beautiful education that I could imagine.
Yeah.
And at Columbia, the dean at the time, Mark Wigley, was really pushing for one, that architecture had died a long time ago, which was like heartbreaking at first, and that we should be looking at big data.
Okay.
To inform a new way of doing architecture. So all of that was like very influential.
Of course.
To all the decisions I made.
I feel like that led you to exactly where you are today.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. Even though at the
said.
time I was so mad at him for saying things like that. The dean.
Oh.
Yeah. So, but it was super interesting.
What's your favorite architecture? Any city, in the U.S. and outside the U.S.
Like a specific building?
Yeah, like architecture in general. Like what cities you think are just like, oh my God, I love the architecture here. You have to name one in the United States and one outside the United States.
Well, I mean, New York.
You love New York?
New York has a collection of almost every important architect in history. So
And
the
outside?
Guggenheim is like a sculpture.
How about outside the U.S.?
Outside U.S., that's tough because, I mean, if Vienna, for example, has tons of architecture by Adolf Loos, who's like one of the great architects of modernism. So maybe Vienna.
I would say, for me personally, Chicago, right here.
I see. Mies van der Rohe, yes.
Yes. And then outside, probably it's a tie between London and Paris, I would say, from what I've seen. But yeah, I definitely appreciate great architecture. If you're ever in Chicago, do the architecture tour on the boat. It's pretty cool. If you're nerd out about that kind of stuff, which I think you do.
No, I do. And I've been meaning to do it, yes.
Okay, so shifting back to the business side, what does the next 5 to 7 years look like? Like, what would you really want to accomplish by, let's say, like 2030, 2031, which sounds kind of crazy saying that out loud, but what would you like to accomplish by then?
It's not crazy. We look at those trends all the time. So one of the most interesting trends is the growth of crowdfunding in real estate. And it's projected to grow 50% a year from this point, which I think puts it at like $700 billion market by 2032.
And specifically Real estate crowdfunding.
Yeah, yes, which I think translates to fractional investors.
Yeah.
I think that's what it does. And so for us, like our only goal here is to be able to algorithmically decide what to invest in real estate. So from here to that point, we expect to have a fund that begins to invest in real estate based on algorithmic decisions, or maybe several funds with different theses, because each thesis can be identified across the country. So that it's like enough to have a fund for each thesis, which would be a lot of fun.
Can you give me an example?
I don't want to give an example that we're actually doing,
okay,
because that's part of like the allure. But let's say there's a really unique and powerful market that's looking for a specific type of property. Okay, and it's very understanding where they are. Those properties is very obscure and like hidden. I'll give you another example that is not part of something that we're looking at. Let's say something simple like the perfect place to put data centers. That's really hot today.
Okay.
And it requires all kinds of different types of information. Do you have access to like the infrastructure for a data center? Does zoning allow for it specifically and things like that? So we write an algorithm that can detect that across 200 cities. And we reduce those properties to 1% or 2%. And then we go after those properties. And we know the giants are looking for those properties, but they're not finding it as quickly because they don't have digitized zoning data unless they're our clients. So then we buy up as many as possible. We hold it for like less than a year. We sell them right to those guys who are looking for it, and we make a premium on it. That's like a very easy fund. The idea, or another idea, is we understand that zoning will change in certain neighborhoods because we see the zoning changes, the rezoning happening before anybody else does.
And this is like algorithm or predictions, correct?
Yes. So one of the algorithms that we have is find the anomalies in every city.
Right.
And so one good example in Riverside, California, we found the one property out of like an entire mile radius that allows multifamily, which means was the very first property, and it was 2020, because we go back in time. And then we fast forward in 2024, there's been 17 other properties, but there's 160 that could do the same thing. And if you go there, nothing has changed. It's like absolutely under the radar. So now if we buy 20 properties there in like, 10 years, that entire area will be like a booming residential area. And so we sell it with that narrative. People begin to notice what's happening, and that's arbitrage. We don't have to do anything, just hold it.
Super smart. So that's like the long-term goal then, is kind of like the funds and getting the, well, maybe not specifically, but potentially getting the crowdfunding for real estate, or would it be an actual traditional fund?
Well, we could start with a traditional fund if that market is not as strong yet. But we're talking about, 2032, that market's going to be super strong and it's growing really fast. So yes, we would probably start with like a fake fund that we say these were the properties we would have purchased, and these is where it's at. Just like to test the market. We could do that within the year probably, because our algorithms are already detecting really interesting theses.
Okay.
So then maybe a traditional fund after that, and then more of a crowdsourcing fund, which I think could be a huge way of like having liquidity.
And maybe you haven't thought about this yet, but even if you haven't, I know you have to some degree. What happens 5 to 10 years out when you want to sell the company? Like, do you ever think about that, and who might be the potential buyer? What might be that outcome? Yeah,
I mean, I think it's unreasonable to say that like a founder's ready to sell something and they could sell it. It's just somebody's gonna want to buy it, and then you're gonna have to make a tough decision.
Right, because there's gonna be an offer in your email, and you're like, shit. Should I take this?
Yeah, if you're lucky, if you're, that's a very fortunate thing to have happen, right?
But what do you think? What might happen in the future?
I think we can attract the investment arm of Amazon, for example. They're like one of the largest, most aggressive real estate holders in the country, and they've been leasing forever, and now they want to own those properties.
And they love data.
It's a great fit. That's one example. There are others. There are other examples that For example, companies that are very strong in real estate data but don't have zoning, so they can't tap into that development capacity or that new construction world. And even though it's not as large as the acquisition world, it is a huge pocket of income. So that could be another exit.
Okay. And what are those, out of curiosity, personal curiosity, what are those revenues that you have to have at that point in order for someone like Amazon to be like, okay, this is worth potentially looking into for an acquisition? About what are those numbers that you have to hit?
I don't know. It's hard to say, because this is the thing. If we are on their radar, because we can scan the entire country and tell them exactly where they should buy their new data center or their new distribution center, they're not going to care how many customers we have.
No, for sure. And I don't think it's less relevant on how successful you are and how much revenue rather than what you can provide them.
Yeah, if we can prove to them that we just found their next 10 deals, they'd probably be pretty happy.
Right. I guess more so what I'm trying to ask is like, how do you get to that point to where to let them know that you even exist to potential buy you out? And if so, let's say you could do that today, would you want to do that today? Probably not. You'd probably want to wait until you have a higher valuation because you brought in more revenue, more clients, because they're going to have to pay more, right?
So something that's really interesting that we're doing is working with a brokerage, a very luxurious brokerage that has over 30,000 agents.
Okay.
And when developers like Amazon, who get their deals from agents, realize that they're using a software or a data set, they're going to want to just go straight into that. So I think we're moving in that direction already. And so, but I don't know, timing is going to be tough.
What about Compass? Compass is one of the largest residential real estate brokerage firms in the world. And I can't think of one firm that has more of a focus on technology. In fact, they even build their own technology to give to all their real estate agents throughout the world. What about someone like that? I think they have a $2-point-something billion valuation too, so they for sure have some cash.
They're a very interesting brokerage because they're like one of the only brokers that have gone the VC route.
Yeah. Which is why I know them. Other than that, I wouldn't know anyone. Probably.
but like they also have 30,000 agents.
Yeah.
But Christie's is now starting, in a way, a huge interest on AI, and we get to build it. We're building it with them.
Okay.
And with a really interesting angle and data that nobody else has.
Okay.
So if we get on their radar, but I don't know, Amazon might have more buying power than Compass. I don't know how much buying power Compass has.
Yeah, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, no, it could be anybody.
Yeah, for sure.
Really can, yeah.
What would you tell the next wave of entrepreneurs starting out, specifically in prop tech? Would you give them any like inside tips or like some like details that they should probably consider before executing on their vision in prop tech?
Yeah, I think really understanding product market fit as early as possible, and before investing in a single line of code, understanding what they're selling and what the impact and who's going to buy it. A lot of founders, myself included, just jump into something because they think it's really cool and they think it's going to save the world. And if nobody buys it, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So I think really understanding that and like getting off the high horse, changing the world kind of thing, and just seeing what's really useful. Yeah, but also I feel like I agree with you. But I'm also going to say that I feel like entrepreneurship sometimes is good to be a little bit naive because you jump into something thinking it's not going to be so hard, and it's actually the opposite. It's like the hardest thing you ever can do. If you can like, you can harness your like naivete and like be like, okay, this is the dream, this is the moonshot. That's what it gives you. Yeah. And then be like, okay, what can we sell now that's going to like lead in that trajectory? Right. Much smarter. Right. Like much better. So with your company in general, do you see yourself opening up any other offices outside of South Florida, or is it going to be South Florida until you exit to Amazon in 7 years from now? We are a remote office, so I'm actually the only person in South Florida. Oh, really? No, there's two of us in South Florida, Broward, yeah. Oh, okay. And where's the rest of everyone? Europe, Latin America, India, Northeast. Okay. Yeah. How do you schedule a call with everyone on like all hands? Well, I get in super early, and I interact with Europe for a good part of the day. And then we're talking like 7 a.m. then or something, right? 5 a.m. 5 a.m. Yeah. Okay. And then I stay late with the team of the US, and they're long days. And then one of our team members manages the team in India, and they have their own schedule. They're very flexible. So,
Okay. What do they do over there versus over here?
data structuring.
Okay. What does that mean? I mean, I know what data structuring is, but what does that mean? Can you explain?
The training sets for the models.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go through that really quick. What does that mean?
That means like there's hundreds and hundreds of ways to structure data sets to train or fine-tune models. We've been doing it for a while. Before LLM, it was NLP models, TAPAS models, BERT models. LLMs came out and it was like gave us so much hope. So what they do is they get the raw zoning ordinance, and we've trained them on what each parameter means, and they look for it, and we tag where it came from, what was the string, what was the outcome. And so each model that we're training is one piece of what this team does. And so all of it has to be like perfectly documented so that the model is actually getting the right question and the right answer.
And AI can do this?
AI will do this. That's exactly what we're doing.
Oh, okay.
You first have to put the set together, you train the model, and then the model replaces that work. And then they move on to something else.
Got it. What is an LLM?
Large language model.
What does that mean?
Large language models are natural language processing models that have, I guess, like mutated, you could say, to consume data, in this case, they consume the entire internet, like text-based data. And they can predict the next letter, the next word when you talk to it. They become really good at understanding what is the logical thing to say next. And they string words together to create meaningful to us, meaningful phrases, based on kind of referencing all this data that they've read or they've been trained with.
Okay.
So ChatGPT.
Yeah, all the buzzwords, ChatGPT, LLM, AI, it's like all the buzzwords in one combo, I
Yes,
feel like.
which is why we have to create these articles first and then fine-tune an LLM model on the actual article rather than the raw data.
Right.
It's not very good at raw data. Like
what is that?
Like just if you give it a table, it's gonna get lost. It's gonna hallucinate. But if you give it 100 articles that describe that table and what it means and how to read that data, it will be able to talk about that table much more accurately than if you just give it the table itself.
2 more quick questions. The first one, what would you tell yourself 10 years ago? Something that you've learned, like a hard lesson in the past decade, and you go back 10 years and tell 10 years ago Olivia what?
Data first, software second.
Data first, software second.
Yeah. We built software, then we realized the data was more important, and then...
Was it a waste of time?
No.
You had to do it to get to where you're at?
I mean, from a spiritual perspective, everything's exactly where it needs to be.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And then last question, do you have anything to plug, promote, talk about? If you're raising, what kind of investors you're looking for, anything like that? Or if you're a potential customer, where do they go to?
Yeah. We're racing. We actually launched a round last week, so it's very fresh.
What's the terms?
Well, terms, we share the terms with those who are really interested.
Okay.
But
okay, how much are you raising?
We're raising 2.5 million.
Maybe that's a better question.
2.5 million.
Okay.
And this is our final seed round before Series A. It's very exciting, and everything's going towards our AI operation.
Okay, so you're looking for, is it prop tech investors only typically?
Deep tech investors that have LPs or team members that are real estate experts.
Okay.
Prop tech, not so much actually.
Okay, so just deep tech.
Yeah.
Yeah, so deep tech investors. Okay, and what else? Anything else to promote, talk about, plug, or anything you want? Parting words whatsoever?
For real estate developers, we have a new report that's going to tell them on their city of interest when zoning changes happen and what the consequences are for each of those parcels.
And how do they get access to something like this?
Deepblocks.com.
And then they go to what? What's the button that they have to
The
press?
chat. We'll
chat
be
button.
there, ready.
Olivia will be at her computer just waiting. All right, that was episode number 2 with Olivia Ramos. Again, awesome kick-ass entrepreneur from South Florida. Be sure to look out for the next guest coming up very soon. It's been a lovely time, Olivia.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.